Alrighty, I'm putting together this presentation on my Beretta 92. Give you a short history on this gun. This is one I bought as a parts gun some years back, and it had been in a fire. It had been burned up, and I thought it was a typical Beretta Model 92. As a disclaimer, the gun has been unloaded. There's the magazine. There's the round that stays in the chamber. Well, I saw the stainless on it, and I realized it was one of the inox versions. At that time, I was also working on a technique to polish stainless steel, and I figured this would be a good gun to experiment with. Long story short, it ended up turning into a full rebuild. I did a trigger job on it, polished and smoothed everything internally, and replaced the factory spring, which was toast from the fire, with a 92D spring, the double action only spring. I cut 2 links off of it, stretched it out the proper length, and it gave me a reasonably good and reliable double action trigger pull and a reliable single action trigger pull. The old Beretta has really became popular in the mid-80s, and that probably was a result of the Die Hard movies and its adoption by the U.S. military. And there's some pros and cons to this gun, and some things that can be a pro on one thing or a con on another. When I rebuilt this gun, I went with all factory Beretta springs, not factory spec springs, Beretta springs. Here's the reason. The only thing that's aftermarket on this gun is the grips, and everything else is factory Beretta parts. First thing that people complain about with this gun is it has a long double action trigger pull for your first shot and a shorter, sloppier single action. Now, I've taken a lot of the slop out of mine, so I have a little bit of creep and squeeze it. If we manipulate the trigger properly in double action, shaboom, shaboom. If we're in single action mode, slack out, squeeze. Slack out, squeeze. I will admit, to articulate that technique, I borrowed from the late Paul Harrell, who explained it so simply and so eloquently that I felt like the proverbial caveman could do it. Law enforcement agencies generally have had good performance out of this gun, where some of the guys in the military have found it lacking. Here's one of the reasons I think that contributes to that. When a law enforcement officer either purchases his duty weapon or is issued it, it becomes his gun. He lives with it, he takes it home, he cleans it, he maintains it. And typically he has an armorer available to him where if something's not right, it can be worked on. And again, with this design, my observations from being a gunsmith, from shooting these type guns extensively, I've owned 2 or 3 over the years. I've maintained half a dozen for other people. No, I haven't worked on them nearly as extensively as I have 1911s, but I have worked on them enough, including my personal gun. Whereas the military, we find out now they weren't necessarily properly maintained, and they were trying to put aftermarket parts in them. The John Browning design of the 1911, everything was made within spec, and it required fitting, but you could make aftermarket parts work reliably in those guns. With the Beretta, your best bet, stay with Beretta parts and make sure you do your maintenance on them. The Beretta is a big gun. It's heavy. It has a 5-inch barrel. And that can work to its advantage and disadvantage. Number one, the big, heavy, long barrel gun is a dream to shoot. It's a very soft shooter for a 9mm. The 5-inch barrel gives it better ballistics than, say, a 4 1/4-inch barrel Glock. The open top design can make it very reliable. Again, yes, it leaves it where crud can get into it, but it also allows it to fall out of it. And you would say, why would somebody carry a gun with a 15-round capacity, 16 if you count the one in the chamber, when you can carry a smaller, lighter Glock 19, it'll give you the same capacity? Well, number one, it might be what people have. It might be a platform that, if they're prior military or their law enforcement agency issued it, they have training on. There are a lot of good guns out here. They don't all have to be Glocks. You have, guys that are Glock fanboys. You have guys that are Glock haters. You have a guy like me. I'm a Glock convert. Took me a long time to warm up to the Glock, but right now, when we look at the money and that I can spend on one, particularly through the Blue Label program, the Glocks give me a good bang for the buck. But maybe you like something else. Maybe your budget's not nearly as tight as mine. Maybe you want the advantages of the 5-inch barrel. 9mm, depending on our ammunition selection, can be capable or it can be lousy. If we're talking about shooting 115 grain 9mm Luger pressure ammunition in full metal jacket for defensive use, well, it's probably not going to perform as well as we hoped. Even some of the 9mm Luger pressure ammunition, like the 115 grain silver tip, left a lot to be desired. Case in point, the 1986 Miami FBI shootout. For the record, they were using Smith & Wesson 59 series pistols with 4-inch barrels and 115 grain silver tips. That was considered the best ammunition we could get at the time in the mid-80s. Now, I say it was considered. Yes, we could still get the 9mm parabellum load, the plus P loads. We could get heavier bullets, just not on a regular basis. Yes, we could get black talons, which were unfortunately a lot more height than they were useful. With a 5-inch barrel, I typically favor 147 grain bullets. These are Winchester 147 grain jacketed hollow points. This is what lives in the gun. Reason being, I think the 9mm needs all the help it can get. That is my opinion. So with the 5-inch barrel and the heavy bullet, I get good ballistics performance out of them. You know, we also have to understand my needs are different than other people's. This may be the gun I have with me whenever I'm beating around the woods and need to shoot a pig with it that has gotten hostile. In Florida, we have black bears. They're not nearly as big as the big grizzly bears. Do I want to have to shoot one with a 9mm? No. If that's what I got and he decides he's going to act up, that's what he's going to get shot with. I also like running hard cast 147 grain flat nose bullets out of my 9mm at around 1100 feet a second. And that load has been very effective as a woods cartridge. While the size and the weight of the Beretta make it a good shooter, some people don't like it as a carry gun. Well, you do have to have a good holster for it and be willing to tote the weight. For a concealment holster, inside the waistband, I like this Bianchi 3S pistol pocket. It's got a good strap on it, so even if I'm beating around in the woods and I typically have to keep the gun concealed because of who I'm out with or something like this makes me a good holster. It also makes me a good holster if I'm in the city, and it supports the weight of this gun when I'm wearing it with a good leather belt. For my general beating around in the woods, when I don't necessarily have to worry about concealing it, and also for competition, I'm using a Blade Tech holster. And one of the heavy harness leather belts I like to wear. But a lot of times I'll also use something as simple as this Golden Gulrich Yaki. And I've gotten good results with this, with my Beretta. I've got good results with my Glocks and several other pistols. This one will cover a wide variety of them, and it's comfortable to carry. Another thing people don't like, particularly about this type of Beretta, is you're limited with your front sight. It's machined into the slide. After examining it, I've looked at it and I've determined that with this particular standard slide, I don't have enough metal to cut a dovetail in after I've ground the front sight off to change it out with a different front sight. Now this sight setup here was originally night sights, but they were destroyed in the fire. So I simply blacked out, for the most part, my rear sight and put a splash of orange fingernail polish because it has a hardening agent on the front sight. There is no perfect firearm. They're tools designed to use it to do a job. What we want to do as shooters, be it we're interested in self-defense, concealed carry, competition shooting, field use, we want to pick the best tool for the job at hand. Now, maybe you're limited, you can only own one gun because of legal reasons, because of budgetary constraints. Well, if I've got to bet my life on one handgun for my personal protection against man or beast, I want it to be a damn good one. And maybe the Beretta is a good choice for that. Particularly if you've taken the time to train with it, learn how to shoot it. Yeah, it can be more than adequate. For somebody who simply wants a nightstand gun, who's not interested in carrying it every day, simply wants something to protect his house, yeah, it's fine. Is the 9mm adequate? Can be, with good ammunition selection. Now, I realize not everybody is a hand loader. Not everybody's going to set up and do ballistics tests like I do. I don't necessarily believe all the hype that, oh, 9mm ammunition is so much better than it was as a blanket statement. They show the technology has changed. Well, if the 9mm is a good cartridge with proper loading today, then it's always been a good cartridge. If it's always been a bad cartridge, well, there's no technology that's going to help that. You're better going to a different caliber. One of the advantages I have found to 9mm as of late is that when we're talking about centerfire handgun cartridges, it's often the most cost-effective to purchase for training ammunition and serious social ammunition for the most extreme of social occasions. So could this be a very good setup for you? Maybe if it meets your needs. Maybe not. So the main thing I tell people is assess your needs, assess your training, and go from there and make your decisions off of it. Later on,